healthy. They may live under the same roof, but is it healthy? We need healthy examples of black on black love. We don't have that. I have nothing against the Caucasian woman, the Indian, the Arab, the Latino, the Mexican. Respect to all of them. But my priority is saving black people. And unlike a lot of our people, I'm not caught up in this multicultural prison where I'm not allowed to speak for black people without speaking for other people. I'm not into that. Okay, I understand most black people feel very, very, very uncomfortable about articulating the issues of African people without speaking for other groups. I don't have that problem. I am 100% for African people, unapologetically so, and I don't care who don't like it. The snow bunny crisis is an issue in our community. You got black men who are being unalived by these snow bunnies. You have black men who are getting their lives destroyed by these snow bunnies. I mean, we could talk about Jonathan Majors. We could talk about Bill Cosby. We could talk until, the sun falls out the sky. But more than that, you have to look at the economic sabotage, which is the snow bunny crisis. Black men are voluntarily taking their wealth over to non-African women. Why would you steal from a people who need so much and give freely to other groups of people who have already stolen enough?
All right. All right. Now, my first question I asked you about the food stamps that's going on in today.
Yes,
now,
sir.
I want to go back to when food stamps first got introduced. Into the black households. What was their plan when they introduced the food stamps to our households?
Well, the food stamps grew out of a reaction to the mass incarceration of black men. So you had the provider being taken out of the home, arrested, and incarcerated. So you had all these single black mothers who wasn't able to care for their children adequately. So the government stepped in, not to help them. Food stamps was never about help because they never gave you enough. You see, welfare was never about help because they never gave you enough. They gave you just enough to not still be dependent on that man. They wanted to break the black woman's dependency on the black man. So when he comes back home from prison, she'll look at him like he's crazy. What are you doing here? We don't need you anymore. So the welfare system was the beginning of the disintegration of the black woman's natural dependence, economic dependence on her mate, the black male. It was the breeding ground for the feminism that came right after the welfare state.
Okay.
All right. So I've heard you previously speak about how the government's plan to destroy the black family.
Mm-hmm.
All right. For those who don't understand the history and understand what that means, could you explain to us the start of the destruction of the black family, the steps they took, and why they did that?
Yes, sir. It goes back to Dr. King's assassination. We have to understand something about Dr. King, despite all the criticism that he gets, which I think is quite well undeserved. And I think is very hypocritical for black people who support Kamala Harris or support Barack Obama or support Joe Biden to be so critical of a Dr. King. Dr. King is the reason you allowed to date that damn snow bunny. He's the reason you allowed to send your child to that PWI. He's the reason you were able to buy your house in that suburb. He's the reason that you can fight back against discrimination. That fight began with my cousin, the greatest leader in American history, the Honorable Frederick Douglass, but Dr. King came to guarantee what Frederick Douglass secured, because although the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendment, particularly the 14th Amendment, was supposed to guarantee us equal protection under the law, and the 15th Amendment was supposed to guarantee us the right to vote, it took almost 100 years for them to fully implement that. So Dr. King came to finish off what Frederick Douglass started. And the point of me bringing up Dr. King's name is we haven't had a leader since Dr. King, nobody, to give us a systemic, comprehensive mass movement for social, political, or economic change. Dr. King was the last one. We're 57 years in, and we haven't had a leader do anything even close to what Dr. King did. And the reason the good reverend was murdered is because he was leading an economic revolution. They were going to go to Washington, D.C. with the breadbasket campaign, and no black person was going to leave D.C. until everybody had a home and a job. And not only was he taking Africans, he was taking Americans of every color. Okay, but they were going to erect a tent city. In essence, they were going to embarrass the government. They were going to embarrass the government, and the government couldn't allow to let that happen because Dr. King and Frederick Douglass are the only two leaders who actually bear the what you want to call it, the distinction of being the only black men who are more popular than the president at the time they lived. Frederick Douglass was more popular than Abraham Lincoln, and Dr. King was more popular than Lyndon Baines Johnson. So after they murdered Dr. King, there was still 5 more they had to get. There was still 5 more they had to get. They had to get our Prentice Bunchy Carter. Our Prentice Bunchy Carter was one of the leaders of the Black Panther Party in LA. I believe he was the head of the Slauson Gang, which was one of the largest street gangs in Los Angeles, but he was politically conscious. He's almost Tupac before Tupac, but not a rapper. And so the government, J. Edgar Hoover, was very afraid of the influence that Bunchy Carter, our Prentice Bunchy Carter, had in LA. And so Bunchy Carter had to be assassinated. They also had to kill A.D. King, Dr. King's younger brother, who was the primary architect of the Fair Housing Act. Dr. King had a piece in it, but it was A.D. King who had more to do with the Fair Housing Act than Dr. King. They murdered him and put him in a swimming pool. And when they pulled A.D. King out the swimming pool, the person who pulled him out the swimming pool said there was no fluid in his lungs. How can you drown if there's no fluid in his lungs? So he was murdered first and then drug into the pool to make it look like it was an accident when in fact he was a master swimmer. So they had to get rid of A.D. King so he wouldn't replace Dr. King. They had to get rid of Bunchy Carter. Then they also had to get rid of Geronimo Pratt. Remember, Geronimo Pratt was a well-decorated Vietnam War veteran. He came back well-decorated for the Vietnam War. He joins the Black Panther Party. He teaches them mastery of weapons, self-defense, building protection. So when they had that famous shootout at 41st and Central and the FBI kept trying to bomb the Panther headquarters, they couldn't bust it open because Geronimo taught those brothers how to insulate the building. So no matter what type of fire kegs they drop on, we will survive. And by the way, SWAT, S-W-A-T, SWAT, Strategic Weapons and Assault and Tactics, I think the name is, that was created because of the Black Panther Party. If it wasn't for the Black Panther Party, there would have been no SWAT. So A.D. King, they had to get our Prentice Bunchy Carter. They had to get Geronimo Pratt. They had to get Fred Hampton. They had to get. Okay, they had to get Fred Hampton. Fred Hampton, I believe, if he was allowed to live, he may have come close to the numbers of the Right Excellent Honorable Marcus Messiah Garvey, who's the greatest organizer the world has ever seen. Black, white, brown, red, yellow. No one has ever organized people on the level of an Honorable Marcus Garvey. Fred Hampton, I think, could have done that. He had just been elected the national spokesperson for the Black Panther Party, came back, he gets assassinated, and the 5th and final person that they had to take out after killing Dr. King was George Jackson, Soledad brother. They had to get Soledad brother. He had started a chapter of the Black Panther Party in prison. He was also co-founder of the Black Guerrilla Family. George Jackson had to go. So after they got King, they took out the final 5. Once they took out the final 5, they said, we're never going to let this happen again. We are never going to let black people take America to the brink of disintegration. I don't think black people really comprehend how effective the civil rights and black power movements were in the 1960s. I don't think we understand it. We brought America damn near to its knees. I don't think we really understand that America had to deal with almost 30 legitimate, serious black organizations, not the kind you see popping up on YouTube with opportunistic leaders who ain't building no institutions, ain't organizing the people, they just run their mouth on YouTube. That's not what you had in the 60s. That's what you have today. This stuff you got today is nothing but a joke. It's all theater. But I'm talking about serious grassroots movements. They had to deal with SNCC. They had to deal with CORE. They had to deal with the Freedom Riders, the Bus-Ins, Southern Christian Leadership Conference. You had the Nation of Islam. You had the Garvey movement. You had the Panthers, the BLA, Black Liberation Army, the Deacons for Defense. We could go on and on and on and on. J. Edgar Hoover damn near lost his mind. And after he took out King in the final 5, they said, we can never let this happen again. So where do we start? They said the first thing we got to do is take away the black man's ability to finance the Black Revolution. The first thing we got to do is take away the black man's ability to finance the Black Revolution. And that's when they came into the black community and economically destroyed us. They went into the high schools, St. Louis included. They went into the high schools and they took out all the industrial building trade training programs. Before 1970, our grandparents could graduate from high school already licensed to be a plumber, electrician, carpenter, welder, roofer, barber. They did not have to go to college. They left high school with a credential that allowed them to work and earn a living that's better than what a lot of us have today. Then they took all the factories out, right? So we're going to make sure they don't learn how to do the work, and then we actually going to get rid of the work. So they turned the black community into an economic desert. That was the 70s. The 1980s, they dropped off crack and AIDS. Biological warfare with the AIDS, chemical warfare with the crack. And I'm going to tell you right now, gentlemen, that probably was the greatest weapon of mass destruction after slavery that the white man dropped off in our community, because most of the problems we're dealing with right now come from the fatherlessness and the motherlessness of the mass incarceration and murder that grew from AIDS and crack. The teenage pregnancy crisis, AIDS and crack. The foster care crisis, AIDS and crack. The homelessness crisis, AIDS and crack. Most of what we're dealing with today, gangster rap. I would make the argument gangster rap may not even exist if it wasn't for AIDS and crack. Not hip hop, gangster rap. Got me? So
Some different things.
they dropped off the crack and the AIDS in the 80s. Then in the 90s, Bill Clinton gave you the federal crime bill, 1994. He overhauled the whole federal crime statute. And for the first time in American history, you could go to jail for the rest of your life if you never put a hand on a person. 3 strikes and you out. Mandatory minimum sentencing. Bill Clinton changed the game. So mass incarceration was really created by the Democrats, not the Republicans. That was the 90s. And then in the year 2000, you get faith-based initiative. That's when George W. Bush, the son, he comes up with a loophole in the federal law that allows them to finance black churches with federal money, even though the Constitution says what? Separation of church and state. But President Bush found a way to get around that. He started financing black churches. Why did President Bush start financing black churches? He don't care about black people. Him and his daddy are 2 of the most racist presidents in American history. He needed to finance the black churches so they would not push back against the next 2 things that were going to be rolled out. All right. In the 2000s, what they rolled out along with the faith-based initiative was the gentrification movement, the taking back of inner city black communities, Washington, D.C., Philadelphia, Chicago, okay? All of these black city centers that were white, but we came into them, particularly during World War I, World War II. White people ran to the suburbs. White people got tired of living in the suburbs. White people said, I want to go back to the inner city because that's where I started. I'm tired of sitting in traffic for 3 hours to go to a Giants game. I'm tired of sitting in traffic for 3 hours to go to an Eagles game. I want to live in the city so I can get on the bus and be there in 10 minutes. Why do black people have it easy and us rich white privileged folks out here in the suburbs having to suffer to get into the city like this? So they decided to switch it out. Okay, that's why your communities are being overrun now. White people taking black property. That started in the year 2000. So they had to pay the churches to not do anything about it. The faith-based initiative was about making sure black churches do not fight for black people anymore. If I go to St. Louis right now, what church is at the forefront of the miseducation war for our children? None of them. What church is at the forefront of homelessness and gentrification? None of them. What church is at the forefront of fighting for criminal justice? None of them. What church is at the forefront fighting against police brutality and genocide? None of them. What church is at the forefront of fighting for economic power? None of them. So they funded the black churches so they could stay out the way. 2010 gentrification, and then the last step, 2000 gentrification. The last step, the brothers, was 2010. Barack Hussein Obama and the psychosexual war against black public school children. Barack Obama was put in office to do 2 things: make America safe for Western exploitation of its resources. Make Africa safe for Western exploitation of its resources, and to make the black community safe for the pushing of LGBTQ alternative lifestyles on innocent inner city black children. Barack Obama did that, and nobody said a damn thing about it. And now look at the problem we got now.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny you say that because day before yesterday, my daughter was asking me, like, the question, she's 8 years old. She asked me, what is a non-gender? And how is it that a person cannot be a boy or a girl? My 8-year-old daughter just asked me that 2 days ago. And it's just funny that you brought that point up.
It's insane. It's absolutely insane. But of course, we know, and I want to say this to make sure I'm clear, because when I go to these universities all around the country, all around the world for that matter, the young people, the first question to me is, Dr. Umar, do you hate me? I'm queer, I'm this, I'm that. I don't hate you. I love all black people, but I do disagree with your lifestyle. And I don't think you recognize the threat that it poses for the survival and stability of our community. But here's the question, gentlemen. When we talk about this LGBTQ issue, we have no control over what adult black people choose to do in their bedrooms, right?
Right.
Our major issue is, why are you pushing this on elementary school children who are not yet at the age where they are sexually attracted enough to anybody to want to have intercourse? Why are you teaching 5-year-olds this? Why are you teaching 6-year-olds this? Okay? Because you don't develop sexual attraction until you start going through pre-puberty, when your body begins to prepare for you to reproduce yourself. You're not doing that in the first, second, and third grade. So why are you teaching this in the first, second, and third grade? Because we want to socially engineer black boys against reproducing with black girls. And we want to socially engineer black girls against reproducing with black boys. This is about genocide. It is not about sexual freedom.
Yes, sir. Go ahead.
It makes plenty of sense. Right. I heard you talking about brother Dr. King. I got a question. When Dr. King was shot, he went to the hospital alive, right?
Yes, he did. Dr. King was shot. He was still alive. And when he got to the hospital, and we only know this because a nurse, I think she may have been Caucasian, but it was a nurse who observed Dr. King's execution in the hospital room. What happened was the surgeon came in, the surgeon or the attending physician came in. I also believe there was a representative of the Memphis Police Department or the FBI there. And someone alerted them that Dr. King was still alive. And they said something to the effect that he won't be for long or something like that. And they took a pillow, and the nurse saw this. She reported this. They took a pillow and put it over Dr. King's face and suffocated him until he died. And you can read this in a book called, let me pull it up for you real quick, because we got to get back to reading again. We definitely got to get back to reading. Let me pull this up. The author is Dr. King's family attorney. William Pepper is the author. So everybody take note of that name. He's a Caucasian, William Pepper. He wrote 3 books on the assassination of the good Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. And it is the last book that is the most informative of them all. And I'm going to pull it up right now. Go to my library, collections, audio books. There we go, right there. No, that ain't it. But on King. Where you at? You put in William Pepper. I recommend everybody read this book. There it is. The Plot to Kill King, the truth behind the assassination of Martin Luther King Jr.
The Plot to Kill King.
The Plot to Kill King. And the author is William Pepper. Don't worry about the title, worry about the author. Because if you type in William Pepper, all his books are about Dr. King. And you know what's interesting about the Dr. King assassination? The Green Berets of the U.S. Army were the backup killers. He was actually shot by a sharpshooter from the Memphis Police Department. And the murder was coordinated with the mafia, had a small hand in it. The KKK had a small hand in it. The fire department, the police department, the governor, the FBI. Dr. King's assassination was the most thoroughly planned assassination in American history. Some people say the expertise employed, the strategy, the organization involved in Dr. King's murder eclipsed the organization involved in JFK's murder. And they even found that there was a link between the two, that the same governmental forces that wanted JFK murdered later also wanted Dr. King murdered. And keep in mind, just like Tupac, just like Big, although I do not put them on the same level as a Dr. King, but I'm bringing them up to say that Dr. King was supposed to be assassinated while in motion in the car. Okay. King's murder, he's supposed to be shot in the car, just like Big and Pop. But when he stepped out onto the balcony, And there's evidence in the book as well that one of Dr. King's pastor colleagues drew him out onto that balcony so they could shoot him rather than run the risk of him accidentally being shot sitting next to Dr. King in a moving automobile. Y'all feel me on that? So he drew him out onto the balcony as if to say, if y'all want to get him here outside in broad daylight, because I don't want y'all taking a chance of trying to shoot him in the car while we are in motion, because he was heading over to one of the pastor's homes for dinner that night. And what was also sad about the Dr. King murder was Dr. King was actually supposed to stay at the Holiday Inn Hotel that night. He's supposed to stay at the Holiday Inn, but black people, as we always do, started criticizing and condemning Dr. King for sleeping at a white hotel, and that's why they ended up changing the hotel to a black hotel, which was the Divine Lorraine Hotel where he was shot in. We actually have a Divine Lorraine Hotel in Philadelphia, which were founded by who? Father Divine, if y'all remember him, of that Christian movement. He's one of those post-Garvey religious leaders who copied Marcus Garvey's work, but redirected our people's energy away from nationalism and into religious beliefs. So Father Divine's organization owned the hotel where Dr. King was murdered, which is now the National Civil Rights Museum. And I strongly recommend, if you have not been to Memphis, Tennessee, to the National Civil Rights Museum, formerly the Divine Lorraine Hotel where Dr. King was murdered, I recommend you go. It's probably the most informative museum in the country about our struggle. The only one that might eclipse it is the Smithsonian, the National Smithsonian in DC. However, the Smithsonian, I have issues with that, with the way in which they present our story. It almost makes you think that we went from slavery to playing basketball and making gangster rap. So I got issues with the way that they roll out the history in the Smithsonian.
Yeah, I've definitely been to the Lorraine Motel in Memphis.
Powerful.
I've been there, yeah. I've been there.
All right, so me and my cousin, we doing this. We started this podcast as like a fun thing to do, right? But now we kind of like, we started to get to the point where we like I said, we want to uplift and help our black people, right? Especially the people in our city, become an outlet for them to, if it's music, if it's art, if it's whatever it is, to get heard. What would be your advice for people like us who are just starting with a podcast, trying to get the word out? How do we start? What's step one of helping our people in our own inner city where drugs is everywhere, gangs is everywhere? St. Louis is one of the most violent cities in the world. We had the tornado that came through, ripped through the city, took people homes. Like, what should be the first step for us to help those people in our community?
I would say that, well, first of all, the most serious problems we have that I mentioned earlier, mass incarceration, miseducation, gentrification, and homelessness. And by the way, we have the highest black homelessness rate in America since Dr. King walked the earth. Police genocide and brutality and economic apartheid. Those are the 5 biggest problems. Okay. The 5 biggest institutions we need are the schools, the banks, the hospitals, the supermarkets, manufacturing, and distribution, right? But these are big solutions and big problems. You said, what can we do to get started? Education and economics. One of the things I think we need to bring back, brothers, to the black community is the study group. YouTube destroyed the study group movement. If I go back to 2010, when I first took over the Black Consciousness Movement as its #1 speaker and voice, there was a study group in every city. St. Louis, y'all had study groups. Baltimore had study groups. Houston had study groups. Oakland, LA, Chicago, Nashville, Knoxville. Everybody had a study group in 2010. I'm going to say around 2015, YouTube gets so popular amongst black consciousness that people said, we don't need to meet and discuss information no more. We don't need to study and come together with information anymore. And that's when everybody just went to the podcast route. The podcast is good. I don't have a problem with the podcast, but go back to the study group, because every revolution, I don't care if you study the Cuban Revolution, I don't care if you study the French Revolution, I don't care if you study the American Revolution, the Chinese Revolution, the Russian Revolution, the African revolutions, they all started from a study group. See, if the three of us are studying together, brothers, you're going to learn things about Dr. Umar you're not going to know in this conversation. You know what I mean? When you start getting my opinions and my thoughts on different issues as we read newspaper articles and magazine articles and watch different documentaries and interviews and read books, we're going to get to learn each other. We're going to learn about our background, our lives, our children, what makes us tick, our vulnerabilities, the mistakes we made. And from that study group, you get to choose your inner circle. From that study group, you get to choose your colleagues. From that study group, you get to choose the soldiers that you want to go into war with. A big reason why we don't have more mobility in the Black community is we don't have any loyalty or unity. You can't get mobility until you have loyalty and unity. Now, with other groups, that's not a big problem. Why? Because nobody destroyed the Mexicans' love for themselves, right? Nobody destroyed the Chinese love for themselves. Nobody destroyed the East Indians' love for themselves. Nobody destroyed, the Arabs' love for themselves. Nobody destroyed the European Jews' love for themselves, and definitely not for 246 years, as was the case in the United States of America. So with us, most of our people are turned off of Black consciousness. They're turned off from knowledge of self. They're turned off from struggling for the people in the community because they have been brainwashed and their parents have been brainwashed by public school, white media, and Black church that fighting for Black liberation is not worth your time. Fighting for Black liberation is something that the Almighty God doesn't even want you to do. You see, so you have to convince Black people that they're in trouble, and you have to convince Black people to work together in order to get out of trouble. Mexicans don't have to convince Mexicans to work together. See, we have an extra step in our struggle because slavery destroyed the self-love and natural unity that exists within the community. We have to rebuild it. And I have no issue with religion as a Pan-Africanist. I believe in freedom of religion. But if I'm going to speak honestly here, my brothers, religion plays a very big role in why Black people can't come together. It's not the only reason, but it plays a very big role, not the belief system, but the political behavior of religions in the Black community. And what I mean by that, if we just take Islam and Christianity, these religions are narcissistic, they are tyrannical, okay, they are imperialist, and they are chauvinistic. What do I mean by that? A Christian will tell you to your face, if you're not a born-again Christian, then you going to hell. If you're not a born-again Christian, I can't work with you. You got Muslims who will tell you the same thing. If you ain't taken your Shahada and said that Muhammad is the last prophet, you going to hell. I can't work with you. You can't bring people together when you got religions telling them that it is a sin to work with someone who doesn't worship God the same way that they do. So we're not going to get rid of religion, but we do have to work with religion to soften the narcissism and the imperialism, become less arrogant, less selfish, and a lot more tolerant, because at the end of the day, we don't suffer for how we pray. We suffer because of who we are. So bring back the study groups, my brother. And I strongly recommend y'all start with the young people, because when I travel these universities, our young people, you know, that 15 to 25-year-old group, they're very hungry and very thirsty for knowledge of self. So you can start with them and then bring the older people in. Now, I'm going to tell you right now, 3 challenges you're going to have with a study group, though. Number 1, making sure people read or watch the material. And you got to have strict rules in your study group.